Welcome back. One of the critical elements of way of being is our motivation. Now, it's shaped by mood, mindset, attitude, worldview, but our motivation is absolutely central to who we are as a leader. I want you to think about for a moment what you would expect in terms of behavior from someone who was driven by each of these three motives. What would you expect from a leader whose core motive was power? How would you expect them to behave? How would you imagine them acting and interacting with others if their core motive was power? Now I want you to compare that to someone whose core motive is affiliation or relationships. They want to be liked. They want everybody to like them. How would their behavior be different because of their motive to relate to others, their motive for affiliation? Now, one more time. I want you to think about someone whose core motive is achievement. They have a goal and they want to achieve that goal, and that is what they're motivated by, is the achievement of the goal. It might be their goal, it might be our goal, but achievement. Let's get it done. Let's get it done. How would you expect someone with that motive to behave differently than someone with affiliation or power as the core motive? I'm sure that you were able to envision some very key distinctions. You've probably even interacted with people who have very different motives for leadership related to these three different areas. The key thing to realize, though, is that all three of those motives represent what we call an I-it relationship. And this is really critical to understand. See, there's a philosopher by the name of Martin Buber, and what Buber believed is that there are fundamentally a couple of different ways that we relate to one another. The first of them is the I-it relationship. In the I-it relationship, we see others as tools, as entities, as things that impact our ability to achieve goals. So if we look at that from a power orientation, I want power. Everybody else is someone that I'm influencing in order to maintain my power. My goal is power. My focus is power. People are a means to an end of achieving power. If it's relationships, we might think that that means that we see the other as something other than just an object, but in reality it isn't. I just want the relationship. I want to have good relationships. And how do we feel about the person who doesn't give us that relationship, right? It's about what I want, because my motive is to pursue something that I want, and people are a means to an end of getting what I want. The third motive, accomplishing goals, clearly the same thing. I want to accomplish goals. People are a means to an end of accomplishing goals. When we are motivated by any of those three motives, ultimately our relationship to them is an I-it relationship. Now, Martin Buber suggested that this has some challenges, because when we treat people like objects, it changes the way that they respond to us as well and diminishes ultimately our influence. Buber believed that what we needed to do was shift to a way of interacting with others characterized by what he called an I-thou relationship. Now, we don't have the use of the word thou in the English language as often, but if you look at other languages, Spanish for example, there are two ways to say you. Yo, tú and usted. In German, du and sie. In many different languages, there are multiple ways of saying you. And those multiple ways of saying you acknowledge different types of relationships. The you that is characterized by usted in Spanish is a much more formal relationship. The tú is a much more personal relationship. You might say that when I see you with the perspective of tú, I'm seeing you as a person. Whereas when I see you with the perspective of usted, I'm seeing you as a role. There's a formal relationship, a role-based relationship. I-thou is the same thing. An I-thou relationship is a relationship characterized by a recognition of the other as a human being that we care for because they are a human being. Now, this is absolutely essential to the reading that you're doing in Leadership and Self-Deception. And you'll see this as you go through the text, that in the book, Leadership and Self-Deception, we talk about an inward and an outward mindset. We talk about being in the box and out of the box. When we are out of the box, we are seeing others as people. We are seeing them from the to or the thou perspective, as opposed to seeing them from the it perspective or the usted, in role perspective. We're seeing them as human beings. And this perception, this willingness to see others as human beings is critical. So I want you to think about this again. Now, what would you expect from a leader driven by service? A leader who sees you as a human being and wants to help you to grow and develop as a human being. But not just you, everyone else as well. And they see the organization that you work in as an organization that is dedicated to serving human beings. How would that change their leadership? As Greenleaf said, it begins with the feeling that one wants to serve first. We might also say the desire, the deep need, the motive, right? The way of being of the servant, that desire to serve. As you can imagine, it's fundamental. And that's really what we're talking about when we talk about way of being. So I want you to think about this. Who is someone you have spent time around who really sees you and wants to serve in the way Greenleaf described? I want you to think about that. Then I want you to go to the discussion board and review your peers' posts and introductions and respond to them. So please respond to 2 posts. Respond to what they've posted. When you're done responding to what they've posted, I want you to, in one of those posts, summarize what you've learned from the reading today. So one post responds to a peer, summarizes what you've learned from the reading today. The second post responds to another peer and answers these questions. What does it feel like to be around that person that sees you and treats you the way Greenleaf discussed? How would you describe their way of being? How is their behavior different from that of others, and how does that way of being and acting impact your own? So you're going to do 2 posts, one that responds to your peer and what they posted yesterday and then summarizes what you learned from the reading, and one that answers the questions on this slide. That will give you 3 total posts in this discussion board. If you have any questions about this, please let me know. Look forward to reading and reviewing your posts.